Hi, I'm Rob Patz.
And I'm Kristen Stanton.
And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, this is the Rob and Kristen Show. Hey, and welcome to another edition, even though my wife makes fun of me for saying that, of the Rob and Kristen Show. Another special edition. We've got some really neat interviews, and of course, it's summertime now.
You know, one of the things...
And the living is easy.
One of the things that I have always loved about summer is reading books. Surprise,
What a
surprise.
shock. What a shock.
No, but when I was a kid, summer would hit and I would grab some books from the library, or as I got older, buy some books from the store, and I would sit down, and that's how I would spend at least a portion of every day, is reading books. And as I got into college and law school and as started working, then at that point in time, reading became more of a luxury, but it's something that I always associate with summer. And there's nothing better than grabbing your favorite lemonade or iced tea or a bottle of water and sitting down in a nice cool place outside and reading a book. So we are here today to give you yet another book to check out this summer. And this is a book called The Light on Horn Island by Valerie Luesse, and we had the opportunity recently to sit down and talk with her.
It's good to be back on the show today with another author interview. I love doing these because it means I don't have very much work.
I was wondering where you were going with that when you said, I love doing these. I was actually going to ask you, what do you mean you love doing them? You actually don't ask any questions.
I do on occasion, and this week I will. I'll ask some questions,
Okay,
at least one, because I've been working on this the whole time. Uh, and we're excited. This is another fantastic author, and we always love having him. Kristen loves doing these interviews, and we want to welcome Valerie Luesse, which I
Hi.
said rhymed with hussy, and she said she did not want to be a hussy,
Mm-mm.
but that was okay. But it's nice to have you here. Big question for you.
Okay.
Who's going to win the Iron Bowl this coming year?
Oh dear, my Tigers. I'm hoping for my Tigers, but we didn't have a good year last year, so
You do.
I don't know. I'm gonna stick with them. I'm gonna say War Eagle.
That's it. Valerie's from the great state of Alabama, and we always say Roll Tide whenever we mention. It's kind of
War
like
Eagle.
it's like we're from Ohio, and we have to mention it's mandatory that we mention that Ohio is the home of the college football national champions. That's OH.
I know.
There you go. See, she even knows it. There we go. I am going to now exit and let Kristen talk about book stuff because we've covered the sports section of this interview.
Oh, Valerie, it is so good to have you with us here on the Rob and Kristen Show. And, I apologize for my husband for, asking you the sports questions, but
It's okay. It's okay.
honestly, everybody that watches our show knows that most of the time I have no idea what he's going to say. And so he usually, it's something that makes me laugh. And I think everybody's kind of used to it. Everybody enjoys his jokes and spontaneity, I guess. So,
Yes,
so,
that's
so
the
tell
fun of
us,
it.
tell us a little bit about who you are as a writer, where you got started, how you got started, just kind of a little bit of a background for our viewers who might not know who you are.
For sure. Well, I grew up in Alabama, and I always say that I sort of became a storyteller out of necessity because we had maybe three TV channels. It was before high technology, so there's no cable, no cell phones, no anything in the 60s and 70s. So I grew up in a family that sort of entertained each other by telling stories, and then my professional life was mostly at Southern Living Magazine and its parent company. So I was very privileged and blessed to be able to travel all over the South as a travel and features writer for Southern Living. And so I just started, I always wanted to write fiction, but never could quite make time for it, you know. And so then I just decided I was going to give it a try. I was, you know, it was actually kind of born out of misery during all the layoffs and everything in the recession of about 2008, 2009, when it was just so difficult for everybody. And I wasn't sleeping very well. And I decided I had watched quite enough episodes of Law and Order at 3 o'clock in the morning because that was the only thing that was on. And so I just dusted off a story that I had written when I was a student at Auburn, which was, you know, 100 years ago, and just started writing without really any plan. Didn't have an agent, didn't have a publisher, didn't know what the markets were, didn't even know how the story was going to unfold. I just started writing, and that really was a great blessing for me because it sort of gave me that creative outlet that I needed to kind of get through those hard times, you know, and it just became such a joy. And then I ended up meeting Leslie Stoker, who is now my agent on a Southern Living project. I actually left the magazine for 5 years to freelance, and they called me back to work on their 50th anniversary book. Leslie was the New York editor that they hired to kind of oversee my work and edit my work, and we became great friends. And she had just started a literary agency in New York, and so that's kind of how it happened. And then I fell into Christian writing really by accident. This everything seems to happen to me by accident, happy accident, I guess. You know, I wasn't planning to write Christian fiction, um, and but several people, friends who read my first manuscript, said, you know, we think this would be appealing to a Christian audience. And it was just that the people and the eras that I was interested in writing about in the South was just a time when, you know, faith played a very strong role in the community and in all of my characters' lives. So it was just kind of an organic thing that I didn't really plan. Um, and at first I said, well, you know, I don't want to be labeled. I want to be free to be creative. You know? But then I always say, you know, it's not like I was going to write anything off color because mama's still alive and the preacher was going to read it. Um, so I thought, well, you know, I'm naturally writing for this audience without really trying to. It's just the things that I want to write about in my books just happen to be in sync with that Christian audience. I was raised Southern Baptist, so and I'm still playing the piano in my little home church now that we've moved back out here. So it was just kind of a natural thing that happened, and then I got to discover all these Christian writers and this whole community that I didn't even know was there before. So it's been a whole lot of discovery for me.
That is super interesting. So, how many books have you written?
My sixth one has just come out. Like I got the first copies yesterday. It will come out April the 29th with Baker Publishing, the Revell division of Baker. And it's called The Light on Horn Island. And it's my sixth. Oh, thank you for the visual aid. That one was kind of a departure for me. I usually write historical fiction. I think the past is more interesting, the present, I guess. But that one, just for the reasons driven by the story, needed to be set in more modern times. So that was different for me, and it was kind of an unusual experience because I had been so ingrained in writing in the past, but it was fun to do. And it's set in one of my favorite places in the whole world, which is the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and I just love it down there. My husband and I both do, and it's an area that even a lot of Southerners don't know much about. Um, People in Alabama, especially, you know, we have our own beaches or we go to the Florida Panhandle. So a lot of folks here don't know the Mississippi coast, but it's amazing and it's very storied. And so I was happy to get to set a book there.
That is really neat. Did you make up the town name or is it an actual name?
I made up the town name of Bayou de Chien, But the other towns are real, like Gulfport, Biloxi, Ocean Springs, Bay St. Louis. Those are all real places that we have traveled and really love.
So tell us a little bit about the plot. Don't give too much away because we want
Okay.
people to go get the book, but tell us a little bit about the plot and your main character.
Well, my main character is Edie Gardner, and she is an Alabama girl who, went off to New York City after college with her best friend, and they got their jobs together. And something tragic has happened to Edie, and she gets a call from her grandmother, whose nickname is Pump. Her last name is Jeremy. She's a Louisiana native, and Punk basically says, "What are you doing up there by yourself? Come on down to the Gulf and let it heal you." So Edie decides to pack it up and go down to Mississippi and spend some time with her grandmother and her grandmother's three best friends, who are all in their 80s, and they're all from Louisiana, and they are a mess. They are just out of control ladies. Um, but Edie, just in the course of spending time with these women and also with her godmother who joins them, it's just a multi generational story of women, really. And through a parlor game that they get from a mysterious antique dealer, and that's all I can say about him. Um, they start asking each other. It's a game that asks you personal questions, from what's your favorite color to what's your deepest regret. And as they play this game together, Edie's in her 20s, her grandmother and friends are in their 80s. Her godmother is probably early 50s, and they start sharing some of their disappointments and their joys in life. And it sort of helps Edie come to terms with this loss that she has suffered. So there's an element of mystery in the book. There's a little bit of romance too for two of the women, and but they all talk about the loves of their life and how love changes as you get older. And there's just this great, I hope, sisterhood in the book, which is what I grew up with. I grew up with multi generations in my family, and all the women gathered around the kitchen table talking about stuff we're not supposed to in front of the men. So I just love that and wanted to bring that into a book.
So is that kind of the thread that runs through the book, or do you have something that you hope that the readers will walk away having a better understanding of after reading the book?
I think I'll have a better understanding of. There's a lot of discussion between Edie, and she actually goes to work for this antique dealer, and she's sort of a secondary thread of the book. She's working on a display of Hurricane Camille photographs and these really moving images from the hurricane. Um, and so she and Jason Toussaint, who is the antiques dealer, get into a lot of discussions as they look at these pictures. And Edie researches the stories of the hurricane, about grace, about mercy, why this had to happen, these individual stories and what they mean in terms of, you know, your faith and how you get through hard times. So for me, that's the core of the book is, Edie is learning from these older women and from Jason, um, sort of how to cope with this loss that she has experienced, which was very personal to me because I lost my best friend to leukemia when I was 32. And we had been like sisters, all through college. Um, that's, I still think about her, after all those years. And just the idea that there are some losses that you never get over. You never put them behind you and forget about them, but it's about learning to carry them, learning to live with them and learning to grow from them and heal from them. So there's a lot of that in the book. That's Edie's primary struggle is how do I live without this person I love, and how do I accept, what has happened to someone so young, which is very hard to do. Um, but it's a journey for her, and she needs the wisdom of these older women, which is something else that I really wanted to get at. Is I think a lot of people who don't have friends who are seniors just don't think they remember youth or don't think they've lived a life. They're just born this old person. But, I've always loved being around older people, and I've always had friends. One of my best friends at Baylor, where I was in grad school, was in her 90s, and they have lived a life and they have felt things and they know things. They know more than we will ever know. And I wanted to get at that richness of these older women that gets overlooked so many times.
I
Just because,
think that go ahead.
no, 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 go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I think that it is something that is often overlooked, and even within our own churches, I think we need to take better advantage of how um, different generations should be interrelated. There should be more of a mentorship and just an understanding, because we can always learn things from people who are older and people who are younger, people who
Right.
come from a different background. Any of those things we can learn from, and I think that's super important, is that everybody has a voice and everybody has a story. And you're writing a fiction book, but in that fiction book your character has a story, and I'm sure that story was born of maybe some of the things that you experienced, and maybe other people that you're around, things that they've experienced. But I think just in general we all need to remember that everybody has a story, and you know God has a plan for everybody, and sometimes it doesn't make sense, but sometimes the things that we go through in life, we go through and then we can turn around and help somebody else go through those things as they're walking through that. So, I'm so thankful for you writing the book and talking about the hard things in the context of a fiction book, and hopefully people will understand more about about the things that they're going through, and they're not alone. Nobody's alone in what they've gone through. Nobody's isolated.
There's
So,
just I just feel like we've lost a lot of connection that we need to
mhm,
get back. You know, when I was a kid, everybody went to church, and the church was really the center of our little town, and we were constantly together. We were going to ice cream suppers, or we were having cottage prayer meeting, or we were, as mother would say, feeding the preacher during revival, and I used to call her wedding china the revival dishes because that's the only time she got it out when she had to feed the traveling preacher. Um, but I love that sense of connection. My own family lost some of it when my grandmother passed because she was just this little force of nature that, when she said come home, everybody came home. And she had 8 kids, and
mhm.
so, I grew up with my first cousins coming home a lot. We all knew each other really well. And a few years back, I organized a family reunion because a lot of us cousins, the second and third generation, knew each other more from Facebook. They'd never actually met, and so we brought them all together, and most everybody came, and it was exciting to see, but it also just kind of rattled me to know, the first cousins, we all know each other so well because we grew up playing together and coming to all the family gatherings. And then that next generation, they're more scattered. They live farther apart. Um, so trying to hold on to those family ties is a little bit more challenging now. Everybody's so much more mobile, but
Right.
it's worth the effort though. It's really worth the effort. And it's worth the effort to connect with people of different generations. When I went back, I mentioned that I left Southern Living for 5 years. When I left, it was a much bigger staff and it was multi-generational. When I came back, it was much smaller because of the economy, what had happened. And most of the people a lot of the staff were young enough to be my kids. Um, but it was a wonderful experience because I could mentor them and they could teach me. They were digital wizards and I was, struggling with email or whatever. Um, but but that sharing was very yeah, I don't know, it was just very beneficial, and it was a real blessing to me to be able to help them on their way in print and just how patient they were with me on all the technical stuff that I didn't understand. So that exchange of generations is so important, I think.
That was a super fun interview. She was a good sport, and there are parts of the interview that we didn't record where there was some funny stuff that we got to talk about. She's an amazing lady. Check out her book. And I always love interviewing pastors. When we get a chance to interview pastors, you got a chance to talk with Chuck Tate. He is a pastor, and this is a neat book.
It is called 9 Words from Jesus, and it's a story about Bartimaeus and the 9 words that Jesus stopped and said to him, and it is, "What do you want me to do for you?" And this book is about how those words change the trajectory of his life and how they will change yours. We are here with another very special guest, and we are here at NRB in 2025, and we are here with Pastor Chuck Tate. It's good to have you with us.
Hey, thank you, Kristen. Honored to be here.
So you have got a hat on that says 41. You've got a book here that you've written called 9 Words from Jesus. So tell me a little bit about the hat and tell me a little bit about the book. And do they go together?
They kind of go together. So, when I wrote and published 41 Will Come, I didn't realize that I was going to enter into a season where I would need my own book. And this is what was birthed out of that season.
So tell me a little bit about this.
So, the number 40 in the Bible oftentimes represents a season of waiting, a season of trial. But the number 41, whether days or years, represents a new beginning, second chance, a breakthrough. And I want to point out there's nothing magical about the number 41. There's nothing weird about the number 41. My faith is not in a number. It's simply a reminder of God's faithfulness. For example, it rained 40 days, 40 nights. 41 came and the rain stopped.
I love that.
Yeah,
I never
yeah.
thought about it like that before.
yeah.
So kind of like when you're going through a dark time,
Yes.
there's hope on the other side.
Right. Yeah. Moses committed murder, hid on the backside of the desert 40 years. 41 came. He received a second chance when he was commissioned by God to be the rescuer of
Okay.
Israel.
So my mind is like clearly blown right now because I've always thought about the number 40, but I've never thought about the number 41.
That's what everybody says. And
I love that. Oh, wow. I love that. I really hate to admit that my mind was blown, but my mind is blown.
well, in my first book, 41 Will Come, I really unpack 1 Samuel chapter 17, the story of David and Goliath, which is a familiar passage.
Yes.
Most people don't know the army of Israel was challenged by Goliath twice a day for 40 days. Then David shows up, 41 came, and he slew the giant. And we know that the army of Israel heard this, and David, they both heard the same words from the enemy, but the army, because of fear, responded with silence, did nothing. But David, because of faith, he responded by stepping onto the battlefield. Of course, he took out the giant and ushered in victory for everybody. So in 41 Will Come, the whole message of the book is whether you're in a downpour, maybe life has rained on you for what feels like 40 days, or maybe you've been wandering a wilderness for what feels like 40 years, or perhaps there's a giant that stands between you and your breakthrough. Don't quit, because 41 will come.
So tell me about this book, 9 Words from Jesus. What is this book about?
So I unpack the story of blind Bartimaeus, and you can read about this in Mark chapter 10 and in Luke chapter 18. The scripture says that Bartimaeus was sitting on the outskirts of Jericho in desperate need of a miracle. And of course, the miracle worker, Jesus, would soon be passing by, making that 15-mile trek from Jerusalem to Jericho. So he was positioned in the right place at the right time, and it was his moment for a different life, for
Wow.
a better life. So when Jesus was within earshot, he could hear the crowd, so he knew Jesus was present. So he shouted, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." But unfortunately, the crowd told him to shut up. So in that moment, Bartimaeus, he had two choices. He could hang his head in defeat and remain a blind beggar, or he could shout louder. So Christian scripture says that's what he did. He shouted louder, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." And that time, Jesus stopped and told the crowd, "Bring him to me." And then we find in Mark chapter 10 that the crowd told him to cheer up. So it's funny, the crowd went from shut up to cheer up. And now they're
Yes.
bringing him to Jesus after holding him down with their mouths. Now they're helping him up with their hands. They brought him to Christ. And then Jesus said the 9 words that changed his life. And I believe they're the same 9 words that he's saying to you. And those are, what do you want me to do for you?
Say that again.
What do you want me to do for you?
What do you want me to do for you? And that's what this book is about. 9 words from Jesus, a book that will hopefully change the trajectory of a lot of lives out there.
Amen.
So if there's one thing from this book that you hope everybody hangs on to, one key phrase from here, what do you think that would be?
Hope has a rope and it's connected to Christ.
Hope has a rope
Yes.
and it's connected to
Yeah,
Christ.
don't give up.
I love that.
Thank you.
I love that. Well, Pastor Chuck, thank you so much for
thank
being
you.
here with us today on the Rob and Kristen Show. That was so much fun, and I'm really sorry that you didn't get to be a part of that interview because he was a really cool guy. You would have had a lot of fun talking to him.
I would have, but behind the scenes, I was actually running back to our hotel room to get the other battery for the camera because we had
True
forgotten
story.
it. And that was it. So you see me running through the Gaylord Texan like this. Pastor Chuck Tate does a great job. He's got a podcast called Revival Town.
Podcast,
Yeah. And he's also on TikTok, all over the place. We just appreciate Pastor Chuck. He's got a great book out right now. You can check it out. Man, where does the time go? These shows go by so fast. And you know, it's kind of like summer reading series. Remember those when you were a kid?
Yes, I do.
See, there you go. We're kind of doing a summer reading series here on the Rob and Kristen Show. Hey, listen, we appreciate each and every one of you. It's incredible. We thank you each week for contacting us and getting a hold of us. A lot of people talking about 7 Weeks Coffee. You know what? You can go to 7 Weeks Coffee, use the promo code ATV10 to save 10% off. Plus, you support a great organization like 7 Weeks Coffee. In fact, as soon as we're done with this, that's what I'm headed to do. And hey, we appreciate you. It's summertime. Go out and live an abundant life.